This is the strongest king in wilderness building. Others build with tools, but he directly started body tempering in the wild. He not only used them to make the axe he needed, hail and hammer, then he made wooden bricks with his bare hands. He built himself a magnificent riverside cottage and a solid wood bridge spanning both banks. His hands-on skills are simply too strong. The man's name is Wang Defa. He just turned 28 this year. Because his wife went to give birth, he went to the wild to settle down. And after swimming across the stream in front of him, he found a place on the other side. Natural small cave, just right to use as a home. But the space inside is too small. It can't accommodate Defa's nearly 2-meter height. He originally wanted to chisel it with stones, but he didn't expect the rocks here to be smelly and hard. He has to use a more handy tool, so he quickly walked into the forest. He collected some wild vines from here, because the texture of these vines is very soft, perfect for weaving vines. And the weaving method is also very simple. Just remember a few unchangeable times. The secret formula for looking at the quadrants. He will soon get a very round vine. And considering that walking barefoot in the wild is not conducive to walking, so Defa combined his own 42-yard big feet, woven to insoles for himself. The top of the insole is bound with hemp rope. They became a pair of very avant-garde straw sandals. As long as you wear them on your feet, Defa will be much more comfortable walking. Then he can safely make ironware. But before that, he also needs to build himself a smelting one, iron concubine. He saw him pull a banana leaf off the tree, cut it in half, then split the top of the branch in two, clamp the banana leaf in between and secure it with hemp rope. This made him a possible free-spinning wild. Then Defa took him as the standard. Draw a circle. Then he went to the nearby stream to dig up clay. This kind of clay living by the water comes with stickiness. You can directly put it on the ground and pile it up, and wait for a circular outline red. Defa went to find a stone, chisel a groove in the middle of it. This can be the base. Let the fan blades spin freely. Then Defa laid a layer of branches on the mud wall. Cover the top of the branches with clay. Turn it into a simple blower. In front of the blower, also use clay to pile up, because this is where the furnace is. And when it's half the height, Defa went to collect some fine clay. Use them to make a vent. Place it in the middle of the furnace. Continue piling up clay on top. You can get a very round stove. If you say this shape looks like a toilet, then I think you're right. And while the clay is drying, Defa went to collect a stone. Using the method of mutual harm, dig a round hole in the middle. Then put it on a branch. Wrap the top with hemp rope. Then he pulled it with both hands at the same time. You can make the branch in the middle spin quickly. I believe everyone who has learned junior high school math knows. Defa is building a hand drill. He saw him sharpen a pebble. Fix it to the front end of the branch as a drill bit. Then point it at a log. Make a small hole in the middle of it. Put it on the branch. Then tie hemp rope on both ends. Now he's much easier to use. As the famous wilderness king within 10 miles, Defa's best at fire starting. He saw him pile dry leaves together, put a piece of firewood in the middle, then use a drill bit to frantically output on it. They soon gave off puffs of white smoke. Then Defa sent some fresh breath. The leaves were successfully ignited. Then add a few branches inside, after burning them into charcoal. Then transfer to the nearby furnace. Add some kindling inside. Then Defa replaced the hand drill with the fan. Let the blower officially start work. The dry in the furnace. The wood also immediately started to burn fiercely. And after finishing this step, Defa, the next thing is to go and collect iron smelting materials. But before that, he needs to find a suitable container first. He saw him knock open a dry coconut. After removing the outer coconut shell, the coconut shell inside only needs to be processed a little. It can be used as a container. Then Defa found a pile of mud. This kind of mud is rich in iron bacteria, just right for smelting iron. Then Defa smashed the wood blanket. Mix it with mud. Knead them into round persimmon heads. Then put it on the stove to dry naturally. And while waiting, Defa went to find clay again, ready to build a stove next to it. Because to reach the high temperature of body tempering, he has to make enough charcoal. And when the mud wall is built to a certain height, he dug 2 vents at the bottom. Then go and collect a lot of firewood nearby. Put it in the middle of the furnace and arrange it, after piling it up tightly. Wrap the top with clay. Add some wood blanket from the top. Successfully ignited the firewood below, and when they are burning the hottest, then immediately seal the surrounding holes completely. Just wait quietly for a day. You can dig open the clay outside. Listening to the sound of charcoal being so crisp, you know they are of very good quality. He saw Defa quickly take them out, all poured into the nearby furnace. Add persimmon heads, then wrap them in charcoal. Then Defa used the blower. Increase horsepower output. You also have to keep adding charcoal. Ensure the temperature inside. It can reach the required 1,200 degrees. After refining like this for 3 hours, take out the deformed persimmon head. Cool it down with cold water. Then use a stick to knock it open. Defa really found an iron rod inside, although it's just a small one. But it's very precious to him now. That's how he did it in the next week. Defa did the same thing. Finally, he collected enough iron rods for himself. And to melt these iron beads, he also needs a capable one, a container that can withstand the high temperature of the flames. He saw him put clay and charcoal together, mix well, then with his own skilled hands, by stacking bamboo layers, he kneaded it into the shape of a cup, then put it in the stove. Fill it with wood blanket on top. Use 1,000 degrees of high temperature to bake for 2 hours. You can get a very strong clay cup. Now everything is ready. Then Defa can officially start smelting iron. He first heated the clay cup until it was on fire. Pour in the collected iron rods. Then keep pulling the blower. Bring it to an astonishing 1,300 degrees Celsius. The smelting process will last about 3 hours. So while he's doing this, Defa is preparing to make some molds for himself. He saw him make mud bricks with clay. Dig out a knife-shaped groove on it with a stick. When it's almost dry, then take out the molten iron. Quickly pour it into the groove. After the molten iron solidifies, then use cold water to quench the fire. This will give you a piece of rough material for a small knife. Then Defa put it on a stone to grind. As long as his hands are fast enough, then you can turn it into a sharp divine weapon. Hunter, a young sapling is easily felled. Cut open the hardest part. Combine it with the small knife. Then secure it with hemp rope. Now he's much easier to use. But a small knife is not enough. So Defa quickly started smelting iron again. Still the familiar recipe. First use clay to make molds for a hammer and chisel. Then pour in the molten iron. When it cools, the chisel needs to be sharpened with a stone, while the hammer needs to add a wooden handle. Next, as long as they work together, even if the stones in the outhouse come, they can only obey. But it's already noon. Defa also needs to start preparing his lunch. He saw him find a rattan. Still use 3 hooks. The way to weave for strings and 5 strings. Get to airtight fish traps. Add a conical lid on top of the fish trap. It's guaranteed that the fish that get in can't get out. Then he smashed the snail he picked up. Mix the snail meat with clay. This way he can use it as bait. No need to worrying about being washed away by the big water. He saw Defa put the fish trap down, after using stones to suppress it, then wait quietly for an hour. Sure enough, he harvested a family of 6 little fish. As a man with years of jungle experience, Defa knows that these little fish only taste good grilled. So he put a slab of stone on the campfire, then put the little fish on it. After half an hour, the fish is completely dry. He'd eat one after another. It couldn't be more fragrant. And after eating his fill, he returned to the original cave to have enough living space. He had to get rid of the rocks overhead. He saw him. First lay a layer of clay on the ground as a heat insulator. Then find some kindling. Use tinder to ignite it. And as the flames at the bottom burned fiercely, the rocks above also began to crackle. And when the stones cooled, Defa could use the iron tools to easily chisel them. Open rocks that were once incredibly hard. Now it's become as crisp as a biscuit. Do any of you know why? That's how Defa worked hard for 2 hours. finally get a very spacious space, just right to live in. Then he brought a pile of clay. Use the river water to moisturize it. You can get a batch of wild cement mortar. Defa put them on the ground and spread them evenly to make the foundation more level. Then he went to the stream and picked and chose. Collected a lot of flat stone slabs. Then through free combination, lay it on the ground. The texture looks instantly more upscale. After that, Defa lay down on it and tried it out. This cool feeling is just right. For easy collection of logs, Defa started the stove again to melt molten iron. Made himself an axe after sharpening it. Then add a handle to it. Then Defa went into the forest, picked out a few young trees and launched an attack. Cut the trunk into suitable lengths. Then carry them back to the base by alternating sides. Then use an axe to peel off the bark. Also trim the edges. Cut them into square shapes. Then use your fingers to measure the size. Cut them to the desired length. This can be used to build a wooden house. As a disciple who was locked out by Lubin, Defa chooses to build with a mortise and tenon structure. He saw him first use a chisel and hammer. Chisel out a tenon at both ends of the log. Then let them connect to each other. Chisel out a through hole at the connection point. Then secure it with a wooden dowel. You can make them firmly connected together. But before the official assembly, Defa needs to separate the logs first. Move them to the foundation, then recombine them together. This forms the base of the shelter. As for the wall part, Defa is going to use wooden bricks to build it. So he cut the rest of the trunk. Get a batch of short logs of the same size. Next comes the familiar recipe. First use an axe to peel off the bark. Then cut his four sides into planes, square shape. It will be easier to build. Then he chiseled out small holes in the wooden stake for inserting wooden dowels. After collecting enough wooden bricks, Defa carried them back to the base. He saw him place the wooden bricks on the base. Mark the position of the peephole. Then use a chisel to carve a groove for it. Now you just need to put the wooden bricks in. You can make them firmly connected together. This process seems complicated, but it's not simple at all. Because if the size difference exceeds 1 millimeter, it's impossible for the wooden bricks to be so tightly connected. And to improve stability, the upper wooden bricks also need to be staggered. Form you and me. I am in your relationship. You can make them truly be together for 100 years, never separate. Considering that living by the river for a long time can easily lead to rheumatism, so Defa dug out a fireplace in the corner and light a bonfire inside. This will make you very energetic when you work. For easy access, he left a door in the middle of the wall, and when it's built to a height of 1 meter, he went to make a piece of ordinary wooden bricks to use as a measure for the door. After that, he laid a layer of logs on top. The walls around it will truly reach the sky. Stand on the ground. Then Defa found a few small logs. It's still a set of exfoliation surfaces. Then use wooden dowels to assemble them together. It becomes a solid door panel. Then he sharpened the top of a log, fixed to the edge of the door panel. This way you can use it as the axis of rotation. Install the door panel on the door frame. After installing this door, Defa doesn't have to worry about privacy anymore. As for the roof, Defa fixed a few beams on top of it. Lay a few purlins on top of the beams. Secure it with hemp rope. After that, go to the creek and ransack it. Collect some flat stone slabs. Then he used a stick as a marker. Draw a square outline on the stone slabs. Then use a small knife to knock off the excess material. They become tiles with a unified style. He saw Defa punch round holes on top of the tiles. Thread a hemp rope through it. This way you can tie it to the purlins. Turn them into a wind and rain-proof roof. As for the corner, Defa will also make precise cuts. Make sure they are truly seamless. And when he's done with all this, he was happy as can be. So he dug open the wound of the big tree. Collected a lot of larvae from inside. These larvae are rich in protein. You can quickly replenish the energy you consumed during the day. The next morning, when Defa was about to go out, he found that the current way of going out was to high profile. It doesn't fit in with his humble family style, so he went to collect a batch of logs. After peeling off the bark, Then use wooden dowels to connect them together. Make a few simple wooden frames. Then he moved the frame to the river, one leaning against the entrance of the shelter, one leaning against the opposite bank. The third one is sandwiched between the first two frames. Form a stable, triangle structure. After all, a love triangle is unreliable, but the triangular structure is very stable. After that, Defa fixed a few beams on top. Lay two extended logs on top of the beams to act as purlins. The top of the purlin needs to be chiseled out. Add two tree trunk seats to support it. Make sure you can land safely when you get off the bridge. Then Defa found some small logs. Lay them on the purlins one by one. You can get a very flat bridge deck. For safety's sake, the bridge deck also needs to add to rails to prevent yourself from accidentally falling into the sea. And after doing all this, now Defa goes out a lot easier, considering that there is no decent tableware at home. So he rolled a round plate out of clay, put it in the stove and bake it at high temperature. The quality looks very good. He saw him put the fish on the plate in neat rows, then send it to the fireplace to bake for an hour. Then pair it with some chili sauce. This tastes very good, as the whole shelter is built. Now Defa finally can live here in peace. So the last question is, if you build a river view wooden house like this in China, what do you think will happen to Defa?